Hello, hello, and welcome to the Rag Company podcast. I'm Dane Hennen. To my right, Levi Gates.
Hey, hey.
Below me, Anthony Fisher.
What's going on?
And the other way below me, Matthew Gibb, our guest for the day. And you know what? He's from Australia, so you may notice an accent. Just a heads up.
G'day from South Australia.
Wonderful. And Matthew Gibb, you are one of our frequent guests on the Q&A, but you're also just a fascinating guy in general. And we really look forward to talking with you here because this is going to be a fun conversation. I think we're going to, learn a lot and, get into some really cool, detailed topics. So I think people are really going to like this one. But,
definitely. Yeah. First thing I would like
go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Okay. Well, yes, from Adelaide, South Australia, and started in detailing as a hobby back in 1992 when I bought my first car I think I was 19 then, and basically decided, okay, I'm going to really care for this thing and make it nice. And then I met a professional detailer back a year later who was doing my dad's work, or company vehicles. Asked him a few questions, said, what's this all about? And he got me going, and then probably by about 1996, I was amateur, sort of, doing a few cars on the weekends. The usual thing, you love cars, you get involved, and you sort of go from there, and you start doing cars on weekends. And then it's 2000, and the internet's finally hit us. We finally get it, at least our family anyway. And it's like, oh my God, this world's massive. There's so many products and brands and all this stuff. And, turned professional after I finished working in the supermarket for 10 years. And a few other jobs. And I just have 27 years is a long time to be doing cars and training a few people who I really regard as future champions in the industry. And I just love this industry. This is the industry that basically either I stumbled across or it found me. Because I was lost. I was in the 90s. I was just like, okay, I finished high school in like 89, 90. What do I want to do? I haven't got a darn clue. No idea. Couldn't think of anything. Okay, look, let's just go and do. Dad just gave me a job. Said, look, go work for the company I'm working for as just some basic tech guy. Didn't like that. Then started working in the supermarket. Did that for 10 years whilst obviously doing detailing on the side. But it's just been just self-learning and basically just learning off of a lot of people. And the knowledge that I do have is from a lot of people, thousands of people. It's not like I've got all this knowledge or a lot of it's necessarily all good. It's not all me. I'm not some magical expert that just knows everything. I don't. But I just love this industry and I wanted to see it really flourish.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
think it's really well said. And I think that you're somebody that's seen it obviously transform over the last 20 something years, and I think that you've kind of seen obviously the introduction of newer chemical technology and all the different chemicals that are out nowadays, as well as machines and how advanced those have become, and how it's kind of created a very easy entry for a lot of people getting into this. I wouldn't call it easy, but I mean it's given them the tools, it's given them the products, right? So where it really comes down to is the technique for a lot of these people and the willingness to learn and get educated, right? And so I think that we've talked about it a lot, that with the chemicals that are out, the compounds that are out, the machines that are out, people can get these professional results at home, and some of these people just being hobbyists, they're able to learn at such a faster rate compared to maybe 20 something years ago when we were kind of limited on what we had out there and the kind of results that you could get. And so I think that you've kind of seen that transform. So we did kind of want to know your thoughts in terms of, from where you started to where things are now. I mean, have you yourself kind of adapted or learned to use a lot of the newer technology out there? And if so, what do you feel like was the biggest advancement? Was it chemicals? Was it compounds? Was it machines? Kind of give us your thoughts on that.
Okay, well, back in 92, of course, it was DA polishes or random orbital or orbital polishes existed, but they were very, very basic. We had the Festool Rotex, which was a force rotation random orbital combined sander. Festool predominantly mainly market towards about 75% of their business is in the sanding side of things. 25% in sort of, woodworking, all that sort of stuff. 25% of it actually in paint polishing and that sort of thing. So we had the Rotex back then, and of course the Makita rotary, the Hitachi rotary, but it was all about you really, unless you just wanted to put some Maguire's wax on or paint cleaner, the old 3-step system of like paint cleaner, polish, glaze sort of thing. It was all rotary, and it was the correction stage it was all 3 stages pretty much. And it certainly wasn't easy. It was not, you could do it fast, and some people could do it really quickly, and you'd go, wow, that was amazing. But for a lot of them, it was what they were delivering then compared to what we can deliver now is totally different. I mean, I learned how to use a rotary and started using a rotary in 98. Didn't master it probably until at least 2007, 8, 9, maybe 10. And you really couldn't do a 1-step unless you were extremely skilled. The chemicals at the time were predominantly very heavily solvent-based. In Australia, when Maguire's brought out their system here in 1991, compared to what we had here, it was leaps and bounds ahead. Mm-hmm. But probably by the early 2000s, it was definitely aging. It was predominantly solvent-based. It was decent. It was good. Some of the stuff that Maguire's had back then, a few of their products, professional stuff, was actually really good. Most of it was really good. It was fine, but it was not, you didn't have all these phenomenal sprays and didn't have coatings. It was all paint sealant, whether it was ester-based wax or a T1 or T2 or T3 grade Knievel wax. And basically that was about it. That's all it really was. So, and all we had, the other thing too is, I think the biggest thing is light. Well, one of the biggest things is lighting. I don't really envy some of the detailers today. I've got all these LED lights, and some of them I've used them in the last 5 years. I actually used to detail cars, and sometimes just on the occasional car, you'd actually have a situation where you'd see this really fine DA haze or micro marring, really fine, with a scan grip light or something, or some other light on a black car that was, modern paint occasionally, and you take it out in the sun, look at under a service station, gas station lighting, or any other lighting, and you can't see anything, and it would drive you insane. We had halogens. And sodium or mercury vapor lights. I had 16 mercury vapor lights in the polishing bay, which have been replaced with LEDs now. And that would really help to really see what I was doing. But I had to always take it outside in the sun to actually make sure. I couldn't. So it's really, for me, it's the lighting. We've got a lot more water-based polishes, and today we've got single polish systems that are burn-proof. Literally means that if you are using a rotary with even a really aggressive foam pad, if it dries, you will not put a burn mark in a cured OEM paint. You'll maybe feel it grab, and it will leave a tiny little trace, and you just polish it right out. Back in the 90s and earlier than that, if you got the foam pad dry, the solvents would dry out and take all the other lubricants with it, and you just pad burn. You wouldn't go have click spray, you'd have pad burn. And you were buggered. It was either sanded out or it was stuffed, and you got to pay to have it painted. That was it. And I did that a few times, and I didn't like it. So today it's a lot harder to actually put what I call a burn mark, a pad burn mark in a panel. It's a lot harder because we don't have those older formulations anymore. They've still got a ways to go as far as polish technology goes, but it's a lot better than what it was. The old stuff was cakey, it was dry, it was gluggy. It was horrible. I mean, it just dry up and flash off, and it would cake on literally it would stick on the panel, and then, if someone was using too much and it dried, you'd be getting the steamer out to take it off, trying to shred it off like it was concrete.
Yep. No, I
It was nuts.
remember that as well. And that was you always knew when the car came back from the body shop, because there was always that nice just load of compound that had turned to basically concrete that was just jammed in the cracks and the doors, and or you'd have hard lines of the compound in the paint in the panel that they had just rubbed in, worked in so hard. And yeah, you were almost taking lacquer thinner to remove it.
Yeah, I mean, if you had
compound
if you had steamers, it helped. If you had other chemicals, it helped.
Yep.
But it was a problem. I mean, some of that stuff's still out there today. Some of them are loaded with pine oil and Stoddard solvent or naphtha and all sorts of hydrocarbons that basically are there to chemically soften the paint so that the abrasives can work faster. I don't know if that's. I've talked to my teacher, who's an expert in all this stuff, and he's not a chemist, but he actually has a company making chemicals for all sorts of industries, including this one. And I'm not sure if that really does hurt paint if you do it once, twice, or 20 times on a car. I don't know, but I don't like the idea of it too much unless it doesn't. If it doesn't hurt the paint and it's all settled back and it's fine, that's good. But some of the formulas out there have got 45%, aromatic or aliphatic hydrocarbon solvent, and to do that or just be in the formulation, and I don't like the idea of that much solvent. But I'm not a chemist, but I don't like the idea of that. So,
yeah, it's definitely interesting to see. I was thinking about this the other day, and I think we talked about it with Rennie, is we're getting to a point in the industry where you can almost see the generational changes from detailers. We've got a lot of those 10-year detailers that started detailing after the financial crisis. They've been in it for 10 years. They kind of fell into joined the industry because of something that happened. You've got guys like myself who've been in it for just over 20 years and did it always as a living. And then yourself, who's the same way. Like we all fell into it for a reason, but it's interesting to see the different timing of each generation of detailer and the skill level. And I find I'm in that nice gap where I knew all the old stuff and learned all the old stuff, but was part of that new early adopter group like yourself, where it was like some of us older guys in it looked at it and was like, oh my gosh, this is so much easier to do.
Yeah, it is.
And these 10-year guys were getting in, and they're just like, the easy step was what they've already learned. And now they're starting to pick up some of those older styles or learning about.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of an interesting circle, I guess you could say, to watch these folks get in there. But it is surprising to see or talk with guys who didn't, and gals that didn't know what the industry was like back then or didn't understand.
Exactly.
Everything that everyone else has gone through.
I feel sorry, and I'm not sure how bad it really was because I was very young at that stage back in the 70s. I feel sorry for the detailers and car wash guys then, because the chemicals back then and what they had to deal with, and guys were basically using a compound that you had to add water to make it even liquefy. It was literally liquid rocks, basically. It probably was crystalline silica, which is, it does, I mean, this, again, to my knowledge and what my mentor has taught me, to me, crystalline silica corrects faster, but it finishes worse. And it's also the leading cause of silicosis, which is not great. And I don't wish that on anybody in this industry, whether you're sanding or polishing or anything with those things. And most of them have been outlawed and basically not allowed to be used, but in certain countries. But yeah, I don't envy them at all. And even like the guys today, I sort of envy them because it's easier. You can do one step, you can do, gloss enhancements, you can do all sorts of different things. Whereas we are sort of like, okay, first step, second step, maybe have to do a third. And if you use the rotary to correct, it's easy to handle, but it's hard to master. I mean, to truly master it, it is not an easy thing to master.
Yeah.
It's, And so I sort of don't envy the guys from the 70s and even the guys today, but I also sort of do and I don't with them because they've got, far superior lighting, a lot more better chemicals, a wider range of pads. And when we had, back in the good old days,
3 pads.
it was wool.
2 pads, foam and wool.
We had foam and wool. That was all it was. And look, we had some good wools and foams back then. I've still got some back in my old polymer bay. I'll show you probably when I talk about foam technologies and stuff. But it's now we've got it's not foam, wool, and microfiber is the main one, but we have rayon, we have silk, we have denim, we have velvet, we have shore buff pads, which are not actually, I don't know if they're microfiber or not, but they correct like hell. But if you know how to use them on a DA, they can do phenomenal corrective work, even though they may occasionally or often leave a hazy finish. They are a phenomenal correcting pad, even if they don't have a long lifespan because of the construction of them if you're not careful with them. We have a lot of pad materials these days, and microfiber has a few things about it I don't like, but a lot of things I really do. So yeah, it's mainly though, yeah, it's, obviously the polisher technology with the machines, it's still to me got a reasonable distance to go, but obviously the lake country, what I call it, the UDOS here in Australia, you call it the UDOS, whatever.
Tomato.
That's a phenomenal machine. I've seen the patents on it. I've seen the diagrams. And I've always been a huge fan of Lake Country because they brought in European foam when everyone else was using American filter foam. And it's a phenomenal design. And hopefully, people will look past the price and go, I can do everything I need to do almost with this one machine. You could switch from going rotary to then 12 mil or back to 15, or you could do, say, a 21 and then a 15 if you wanted to, or work out different combinations to get different finish qualities, or just use one. You could sand with it with 8 mil, and you can do smaller areas with 12, or you can 15 the whole car, or you can do maybe a couple of passes with rotary and go straight back to a 21 or a 15 and get the best of both worlds. That's the most exciting part.
Yeah, and I think that using it, so when we were, when it was just a month ago when Ivan was here and we had the final version of it, because we had held and we had even used several different prototypes up into that point. And so the first version was a bit bulky in terms of the grip and the kind of the comfort. The second version was more comfortable, but still had a little bit more weight there that they needed to shed. And then this final version, this production version that we had felt, that Ivan had brought, it was just it was a very well planted machine, and I would say that it did everything that you wanted it to do, but I think it's going to be really easy for people to nitpick about things that that they may notice or they may see. Right? We had a live video where we were showing off a demonstration of it. And people are saying, "Oh my gosh, look at, you can see it's got some wobble to it," or it looks like it's not running super smooth, and they're nitpicking about it. And I'm like, okay, first off, there's a ton of different variables, right? That could cause that machine to be wobbling. And in this case, it was a dry pad, or in another case, it was because we weren't applying any downward pressure to the head of the unit.
It was the first time Dane had ever held a polisher.
Yeah, they're basing it on a guy who does not hold a polisher more than maybe 30 seconds at a time for more than 10 occasions, and I'm holding it there. I don't even have it balanced on the panel or anything. I turn it on in a live video. So it's like, look at that vibration. It's like, I'm not even putting pressure on the thing, man.
Yeah, Dane's just got his hands on it.
If I'm gonna put this into an analogy I can understand, I would say it's kind of like when Porsche brought out the 911 and the engine's hanging out past the rear axle. It's like, it's a new design. It's doing something. Well, it's not new. There's other cars that do it, but that's besides the point. They're engineering out the inherent faults of having an engine that's so far back there. But now you have a car that's like world class, could beat everything at what it does. And yet it still has that engine hanging out way back there. They move it a little bit, but it's still hanging out over the back. It's inherently different, so it's competing with coming from a different angle, but it's trying to do more things differently than everybody else is doing it. Of course, there's going to be some engineering that has to happen, some learning curves, some things that have to be accommodated just because it is different. It's multiple machines packed into one body and housing that can just switch on the fly. There's nothing else that's doing it that way. Of course, it's going to be a little bit different in the execution, but you know what? Anthony, I saw you use it. Levi, I saw you use it. Ivan used it. When it was in action, watching a user go through the motions and actually, perform paint correction with it, it looked like it was every bit as good an experience as any other tool you guys had ever used. I mean, realistically.
And it was. Yeah.
I didn't see any kind of like, oh, that's a weird ergonomic flaw that's going to give me carpal tunnel, or oh, that's
we were literally
whatever.
teaching. We were literally teaching you, Dane, how to use a rotary.
Yeah.
And all jokes aside, it was the fact that it was the first time you had ever literally held a rotary polisher in your hands.
I'll be honest now, I actually kind of preferred the rotary action to the DA.
Of course, there's no vibration, is there?
Yeah. So it was Dane's first time really manipulating a polisher on the surface and taking direction.
Like, I've used DAs before, but not rotaries in any kind of major capacity.
Yeah.
Not more than 5 minutes.
And you were on a very oxidized surface that is going to be very grabby, so it was funny if you were a professional detailer and you had been in that situation, you had seen that, you would have gone, oh, of course, like, this is a person who's learning. Obviously, we've even stated he's learning how to use this. He's on a panel that needs, is a very heavily damaged panel. And so he's learning how to utilize it. But it was still funny to see these keyboard warriors who were just oh my gosh, look at the way that he can't even keep a hold of it. It's bouncing, it's vibrating all over.
Anytime you see those messages pop up and they're like within 10 seconds of the whole thing starting, they aren't actually responding to anything really happening at the time. They were literally just waiting for the first opportunity of something to be quote unquote wrong. And then they just leap on that and go, there's my thing. That's how I can dismiss this. That's how I can justify, I'm not going to pay for that. And it's like, fine. And we're not trying to sell them here, talking amongst ourselves. The reality is that's just the real experience you guys had. And if I was in the market for a tool, I would have that near the top of my list, if not at the top of it, after looking at all this stuff. I love the Rupas, but that is an awesome machine, the Udos.
Yeah, exactly. It is. I mean, I can tell from just looking at what I've seen, but unfortunately, we've got people in society. I used to be very opinionated, and I got in trouble a number of times for it, and I've backed right up on that, but I still like to share things when I can, but I am very respectful of people in the industry that are high up. But I mean, there's people out there looking and going, it's so easy to criticize and judge, isn't it? Rather than actually go out there and try and make something yourself, or just think, it's happening in this situation. I mean, with oxidized paint, I'm not going to go off on a tangent on oxidized paint, but I would sand oxidized paint these days if it was anything more than mild, because it's just so much easier to fix, and it fixes it usually permanently, or on the second occasion it does. It's understandable, but it's a great design. I mean, because I got the Metabo SXE 450 TurboTech sander polisher back in 2006, just to actually finish with on the occasions that I just couldn't get the rotary to finish right on certain paints, because it had a really nice, easy action and orbital mode. You could go from 2.5 mil orbit to 6.2 mil with a push of a button. And I thought, one day we're going to have dual orbit machines and then variable. And Lake Country just went, okay, we're just going to go straight to variable. At least I wasn't that far off. And that was 06. And I've tried for the last 10 years, well, probably from about 08 to about 2014, to actually say to about 25 manufacturers, including the main ones that are well known, Fine, Flex, Sparky Power Tools in UK and Bulgaria, who make probably 25 different rotary models. up to 2,500 watt monsters. And no one was interested because they just couldn't see the size of the market. It's massive these days. And they didn't want to do a dual orbit machine. Maybe they didn't want to invest the money, or they didn't believe in it, or maybe the way I delivered my spiel to them wasn't right. But at least we've had Rupes do what they've done, which is great because, back before Rupes came out with the Bigfoot, Mark 1, 2, and now obviously the 3, I was using back in 07 what is basically, I believe, is the original long throw machine. It's not really a machine, it's a tool, an accessory, which was the Dynabrade DA head. The D8, what we call a DA head. And
Which is
you
wild.
put it on a rotary and you would have 19 millimeter orbit. And we went, holy crap, and it was phenomenal. And I was basically said, okay, look, the Makita rotary works with this, but it's not delivering enough power and torque to handle this what this thing needs. It needs 1,500 RPM minimum for just a turn, and it needs a lot of torque and a lot of power. So I said, okay, look, I'm going to shop globally for a machine that has variable speed, that has tons of torque, heaps of power, that can actually handle this thing, because what Makita was struggling with was the fact that it just couldn't make it balanced. They designed the Dynabrade for 8-inch pads. So if you went from anything from 7 was great, 8 was great, 6-inch was okay. But you went 5-inch, it would vibrate like a psychopath. It would vibrate like crazy. It was horrific. And it's all we had. But it's all we had. So, and it was a Frankenstein. And even with when I finally found through Flex that they had a stone grinder with 1,500 watts of power, and I'm talking about serious power, and a gearbox to handle grinding stone all day, it was an absolute, beautifully balanced, absolute weapon that could literally, if you used a microfiber on most cars that were medium hardness paint, you take half the peel off, in no time.
Yeah.
It's still probably the most deadly machine you can use as far as its brute power, and you can put it on speed 3, and you could basically put your entire body weight on it, and it would not stop it. You just couldn't. You slow it down a bit, but you'd never bog it. It just couldn't. It just couldn't be done. It has so much power.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, one thing. So I guess one thing I want to kind of transition into then. So to make this, because this is obviously really good knowledge. I'm sure a lot of the people that have been in this for years are probably just loving the information. But to bring it to more, relevance for where we are today, right? So for everybody that's listening today, because I guarantee you there's tons of listeners out there that are looking over at their Rupes machine right now, or they're looking at their 30.
They're going, how can I get my hands on a Flex stone grinder and a Dynabrade?
Yeah. So with that said,
yes.
Matt, what out of the machines that are available today, setting aside the Udos, right? Let's maybe talk about the more popular brands and kind of what's out there. What machine do you feel is up to your standards, and what is your your kind of favorite pad combination, right? And I know every situation is different, but if you can kind of isolate that to saying, hey, this current pad on the market is one of my favorites, and this finishing pad is one of my favorites, what would be your go-tos?
Okay, machine-wise, rotary. I have tested one for Metabo, their latest one for Metabo, and it is the PE1520 RT. It's very, very ballsy. It's a little bit loud, but it actually has a lot of power. It's very comfortable, and it's got a lot of grunt. It's not it's probably 1,500 watts, but it actually is really, really torquey. And I reckon besides Flex rotaries in the US, get a Metabo, because some of the Milwaukee cordlesses are pretty good, but they can be quite loud. But as far as you're saying, look, I want a really reliable rotary that's got plenty of power, it's going to work, it's going to be reliable, it's not going to bog down when I put a little bit of pressure down, the Metabo is probably my preference. As far as going away from the UDOS and thinking about DA machines. As far as random orbital, obviously the Rupes Mark III is still the pinnacle. I didn't think much of the Mark I because it just lacked, compared to what I had at the time, which was the flex stone grinder with a dynabrade head, even though it wasn't quite as balanced. It lacked a bit of power and a bit of torque. But the Mark III, they've really done a lot of work with that. The Mark II was fantastic. The Mark III is really great, and I've even sent them, I'm not sure if they even got it, but it was in an email, or I think it was in an email. I sent them basically my wishes for the next generation of their tools, and that was basically a mini force rotation and random orbital, or just mini force rotation machine. And the Mark IV, basically like doing an anniversary version to celebrate like 10 years. Well, it's virtually now, it's almost 10 years since the original version came out, and basically having some new features. Force rotation wise, even though they're not most commonly used, I mean, I haven't had a chance to even look at the new Flex XCEs. They had a lot of years they were working on that machine, and they sort of showed it at SEMA, and I watched the videos on it, and then they sort of said, oh no, we're not going to sell it now. And they went back, maybe they went back to the drawing board, and they did some more work on it. But I mean, it might be really, really good. I haven't had a chance to even look at one because I just haven't got around to it. And but certainly, Metabo, Rupes Mark III, pad combination. I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios, but probably I'm a real big. My favourite pad, as far as like correction wise, these days, before I follow up, if I'm doing my own cars, probably the Rupes Melee Yellow Wool is actually a personal favourite. But I have an absolute favourite, even though it's not technically, almost not quite a finishing pad. It's it's a blue pad from my supplier in France that make their own foam, and it's very similar to the Lake Country HDO blue and SDO blue, virtually identical.
Okay.
And it's somewhat of a universal pad. It's not quite universal, but it holds its density all day. It doesn't soften, like work for a bit and then soften a lot, which is not a bad thing. It helps you to finish if you're using like a UHS pad or something like that. That's a fine attribute. But I think a yellow wool and then a blue Decatex pad actually is probably my favorite. But it doesn't always finish the best on everything. But it has the ability to remove wool, any kind of wool marks you may leave behind, and it can actually also be an intermediate and almost a finishing pad. So it's pretty durable, pretty good. But probably my favorite finishing pad, which is not available anymore, unfortunately, and it was only available in Australia with a company, the guy I know that owns the company. It was 120 pore per inch white foam for rotary, and the gloss results you'd get from that after doing, say, a previous one or two steps was phenomenal. I mean, 3 to 4 shades better than any other finishing pad you could buy on the planet. But I don't know who made it for him, or if he made it, had someone make it, like Dunlop maybe, because they've got some foams in Australia, or Bridgestone Japan. I don't know, but it was a phenomenal pad. I mean, it was very, very soft, but man, it would finish on a rotary insane.
Yeah, well, I think that's really good information. And then, because you brought up some other good topics here, and so kind of going down the list here, and one thing that I thought was interesting, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. And so you said, you have a belief that quick detail sprays and as well as wash and wax services and things like that are becoming more obsolete today. And I kind of wanted to know your thoughts on why that is.
Look, I mean, it's just that they've been around wash and wax services. If it depends on how you're doing it. If you're using a modern spray sealant, if you're washing and claying or washing on removing, and you are then claying and doing a very fast polish, or it's just wash and iron remover and applying any kind of spray sealant or spray coating, that's probably okay. But I'm talking about people who just use a wash and wax with an ester-based synthetic wax in it, and that's basically it. I've just got the opinion that basically there's too many people in the industry. There's not compared to like everyone that's actually out there on the planet. There's not that many, but there's enough of them that just all they think about doing and ever do is wash, wax, cut, polish, carpet shampoo, fabric protection, that's paint protection. And look, that's always been there, but it's just getting old. Like, if you can find a way to actually evolve it to where it using today's technology, and it's actually delivering more than just washing a car with a wash and wax, or a wash and then putting a wax on by hand or machine, then okay, it's not obsolete. But to me, those services they're old. They're I mean, we've got encapsulation technology now we had it for years and years. I've used it for years for interiors. So you can, and we've got hot water cold, warm, and hot water carpet extraction technology that with encapsulation technology in it, so you can shampoo like you used to do or always done, but it never wicks. Even if you leave all the residue in there, it just doesn't happen. So it's a hybrid of both.
Yeah.
Quick detail sprays to me are still there's some good ones out there, but the spray sealants and spray coatings and have really taken over, and that they've got more body to them. They've got more ability. Quick detail sprays tend to be like propanol, an alcohol, or just that and silicon, or that's basically it. There's a lot of varieties, but it's just not enough. There's not enough that they do. They don't do enough besides just being sort of like a body shop safe spray, or something that offers a tiny fraction of protection. And even if you wipe the car down with it at a show, you're going to get more marring than if you use no rinse at whatever ratio. It's just, and look, I could be wrong, but I want detailers to actually, adapt, grow with the times, and keep moving forward, and always be basically going, okay, look, we've done this for this long, let's change it. Let's do something new. I want them to do new. I offer new services using new stuff that we didn't have before, and we haven't even got now. It might seem strange, but I've always been a forward thinker. I've tested 160 brands of products, and in many different ways, and always okay, this has come out, that's great, I'm using it, what's next? Okay, that's out, what's next? What's next? What's next? I never stop. And it might drive some people crazy, but that's how I am. I'm passionate. I love this industry. I want it to keep moving, and them to be offering services, not just the same old ones forever.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I brought that up is because, I think that, we've all probably seen this at least once or twice. I mean, I don't know if that down in Australia, but like on like Facebook Marketplace or something like that, right? I'll see somebody promoting their detailing services, and I can tell that there's somebody that is new to the industry, or somebody that's trying to start something from nothing, right? Somebody that says, well, hey, I can figure out how to detail, I'll make some money, so let me offer these services. And so you'll see these jobs where they say, I'll do a wash and wax for $50 or whatever it may be. And it was funny because I saw a guy the other day, and it was a repost in a group from somewhere else, and it was a guy kind of promoting, hey, this is what I'm going to do to your car, and this is what I'm going to use on it. And so he said that, he's going to wash the car, and then he's going to clay the car, and then he was going to put on specifically, it was McGuire's NXT, their Tech Wax 2.0. I don't know if you remember that. It's a purple bottle, and which is funny because back, I think I want to say 13 years ago, that's what I was using on my Honda Civic. And I actually really like, as funny as it is, I actually really liked that compared to like a traditional paste wax at the time. I really thought that it was a good little product. But promoting that as a service, saying, I'm going to wax your car with McGuire's NXT Tex Wax, blah blah blah, and and everybody's kind of roasting him because it's like, oh my gosh, it's use something that's not available at the store. And in the way I see it, for the people that you have to think about, there's so many people out there that have no idea that there is this many channels of detailing in terms of Facebook and YouTube and all of that stuff. And it's kind of like the guy that has an idea that says, guys, I'm gonna start doing this, and I'm gonna make something of it, and then he has no idea that there's an entire industry right around the corner that he's unaware of. And so, like, I think that with a lot of these guys, I think that very soon they learn what's out there, and they learn kind of what other people are using. But I do think that I agree that they should definitely be looking into what's new, and I think that they should be adapting to the current market. But I also think that sometimes they need to kind of cut their teeth on what they have, and learn. They if they don't have that learning curve, and you're just spoon fed all this stuff, sometimes it just kind of goes over your head. I mean, some people that call in and ask, hey, what kind of wax do I use in my car? And then I'm like, I ask them, how far do you want to go down the rabbit hole? And they're like, well, how far does it go? And I'm like, it'll go so far that it will, it'll burn a hole through your brain. And they're like, well, I thought waxing was waxing. And I'm like, if you keep asking these questions, I'm going to give you answers that you're probably not going to want to hear. And it's going to probably make you want to spend a lot of money. And they say, okay, well, tell me. And so then I go down the rabbit hole, and lo and behold, their $20 order now turns into a $350 order. And I say, I'm sorry that happened. I warned you. I said that this isn't something that you may want to get into, but I do think that most people should still continue to cut their teeth. And I think that if some people can even get started with store-bought stuff, and so now they have a standard, right? They have a baseline level to where everything following that can be a comparison to that. So for example, if somebody went to the store and bought McGuire's 105 as their first compound they've ever used, and now they have this idea that all compounds stain trim, and all compounds dust, and all compounds are hard to remove. But then we introduce them to something like the Last Cut that we sell, or Optimum Hyper Polish, then it's going to blow their mind, and it's going to hopefully provoke them to want to learn more.
Yeah, and I mean, and you make some very good points there, and I totally agree. It's just that drive that I have to see them, because I never ever offered. I always wanted to offer what detailers weren't doing and what they couldn't do. And that's not because I want to say, look at me, I'm amazing, and stroke my ego. I don't have really much of an ego. It's just that I want to be on the friggin' absolute leading edge and always be doing something new and different. And unfortunately, sometimes when I have this brain that's no match for Kevin Brown's brain, but I have this technical brain that just sort of thinks about all this stuff so deeply and looks at everything so minutely to the most in-depth, craziest degree, like backing plates, about J-hook and micro hook and mushroom hook friggin' style Velcros, that most people would go, just put a pad on the plate and go. But to me, it's like, no, but you shouldn't use a micro hook with a J-hook plate, or the other way around, because it'll cause issues and all this other stuff. It's just how I think, and I just want people to actually go, okay, especially the guys who've been around a long time, to go, look, we've used quick detailers, they're good, they have their place. We've used waxes, we've used polymer paint sealants, we've used all sorts of things. Let's just keep moving and adapting, because Bruce Lee is my idol. He's the guy that's always been, to me, set an incredible bar I'll never reach. But I've adopted some of his mentality, and that's like, you've always got to be adapting, especially to cars, like car surfaces, different surfaces, new ones, all these new composite materials that the new modern cars have got and going to have. And you've got to always be adapting, and I'm not saying to go out and buy every new product that comes out. I mean, I made that mistake once, and I was buying all sorts of stuff and spent tens of thousands of dollars. But it sure taught me a lot of things about a lot of products. But But yes, I mean, you make a lot of good points there, Anthony. I totally agree. And look, if that's what they want to do, and that's where they are, and they use Maguire's 105, it's not a bad product. There's a lot worse stuff out there than that. I can tell you, a lot worse.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, and I can attest to Matt's humbleness. I met Matt in, I think it was May of 2013 when he came to
2010
America.
originally, I believe. 2010 originally the first time, because we were in that little place with the Audi guy down across the road.
Yeah, I think because I opened my shop in it was fall of 2011 or 2012.
Maybe you were actually working there at the time, then you took it over or something.
No, I was. It had always been my building. So, but you came over either way and introduced yourself. And the guy that Matt was with said, "This guy's the best polisher in the world." And the words out of Matt's mouth was, "I'm not that good. I'm nobody." And I love that about him. And we just started having a great chat. And I wish we could have had more time on that day, but since then we've developed a friendship, and it was one of those things that, like, to have you, Matt, with as much knowledge as you have in the industry, and to meet another detailer that you hadn't met yet. You and I didn't know each other, but to just be that, like, he just was, so what are you using? What's this product? What do you got? We walked around the shop, checked it out. That, I think, is a character trait that many detailers need to. I think there's a lot of ego in this industry, and there's a lot of guys that don't quite understand what it takes, and every single one of us just want to talk shop. And what I love about Matt is he wants to talk shop all the time, and he's so fascinated by every little thing. And for those of you that are listening to this podcast, like, I know this is a lot of knowledge, but this is exactly what you want when you want to talk shop. Matt thinks of everything, and your brain is insane.
I've got a lot to cover, and hopefully it's good stuff. But thank you very much, Levi. I appreciate it. Because look, that's how I am. I may have been perceived by other people higher up in the industry as the guy who just wants attention. And I've been on Jimbo's podcast. I've been on Optimum's, and that was a really, just talking about my story and what happened to me. And I shouldn't even be breathing at this point. I should have been dead at 6 weeks of age. But I just have that. I'm always trying to be humble. And I've always thought that, am I being humble enough? But I do want to get through a lot of things as fast as we can. Not too fast, but obviously the time's ticking. But foam pad technology has come a long way. I've talked with Recticel in Belgium, Foam Partner in Germany, Gicotech in France, who are my main people, FlexiPads, Technical Foam Services, trying to find the best foams I could, using Lake Country at the time as well, still use some Rupes stuff, bit of Buff and Shine occasionally, tested all sorts of brands. But what Technical Foam Services in the UK told me, they have about 200 different foams, and they supply some of the stuff that one of the manufacturers in Europe actually, sells. Well, they're actually a foam converter, they sell. And he said to me, do not wring out foam pads when you're cleaning them at all by hand or whatever, because you can actually crush the cells. Now, people might have, I'm not sure if he was absolutely correct, but I've stopped doing it ever since then, and I've stopped putting them in machines. I've stopped pressure washing them from a distance years ago. I always compressed air them from a distance on an angle, but obviously that can still cause an issue. But I definitely recommend people don't soak them in a bucket for like more than a very short period of time, because foam and water tend to not like each other that much. I mean, yes, they absorb it and they can hold liquid. But if you get a foam sponge, a traditional foam sponge, and you used to leave it in a 20-litre bucket or a 10-litre bucket or a 5-gallon container of shampoo and water, and you leave it there and you wash car after car after car with it day after day, or leave it just to soak in there for a week, 2 weeks, it loses its density. It loses that brand new firm. It loses it. And so I stopped soaking them. I even stopped pretty much hand washing them, even as gently as I can. What I basically do when I was detailing cars up until like
probably early last year, was blowing the pad with air, a bit of water or a bit of something else like no rinse, whatever. After every probably two passes to three passes, especially with microfiber on a DA, probably a pass and a half, and it's blow, 3 or 4 times. And then say with a foam pad, I would 2, 3 passes, 4 or 5 passes at that point. Like, abraded paint residue is your enemy. As soon as it comes off the car, it's your enemy. You got to get rid of it. And I'll use one pad for one panel, go and change it to another one of the same type, and I might use 12 to 15 pads, whether it's foam for a one step or microfiber for a one step, and literally have nothing to fix. I rarely ever get micro marring with microfiber. I would rarely ever get wool marks on a DA. And I would then go through and I'd spray it with a specific citrus-based stuff that my teacher makes. And because APCs actually some APCs can actually dry out, discolor, and actually really make the foam, when they're dry, feel really rough and lose that brand new sort of feeling. They go real dry and discolored. And because of all the sodium that might be in it, or the ethanol and all the other different ingredients that are in there, trisodium metasilicate, that sort of stuff. So, I don't recommend ringing them when you're trying to get the water out of them, like really squashing them together, because you can crush the cells and all that sort of thing. So, that's just why I don't use them. I don't use one and keep cleaning it. I just switch, and I have, say with the blue pads I bought 300 of them, and I said, okay, I'm going to use this 20 or this 12 for this car, one panel, change it. Once I've done that car, I clean them as carefully as I can, whether it's pad washer or if I hand gently, no ringing, just gentle sort of put my hands together and just touch it a bit, and then just leave it to dry. Get another 20 and use them and spread it over and over to the point where I literally, if I can flip my screen, this pad here, which is the main one from France, that's probably done 20 cars.
Wow.
And if you see shredding, like a lot of the crash shops here especially, they'll use it once on a panel, or say a section of a panel. They will then add polish again, and then they will polish again. That's a big way to actually, from my experience, what I've seen, to increase dusting and actually start causing marring and scouring. And they rip up the foam and it's all shredded, and after about 3 cars it's knackered. Pads should last you years. I mean, not that everyone can go out and buy 20 of this size of this colour and 20 of the next size down and the same colour and all that, but you've got to make them last. Because I know someone who's here who actually, his pad bill when I last knew him and seen him was $1,000 a month, because he'd buy a new one, use it once and throw it in the bin.
Yeah.
Don't get it. They should look like this, or maybe losing some of their colour a little bit, but still feel like new, not dried out and rough. And they should hold that density. They should not be dishing right in the centre, like literally just going flat. If they are, not good. So, yeah,
that's crazy. I never even thought of that. I've always touted multiple pads, but never to that extent. I've always been and that's just how I've always done things, was 3 pads, maybe 2 pads, through a process on a vehicle, maybe one for one side, one for the other, but I've never done one per panel. And you're right, though, that the amount of pads you go through when you're running a business, I was guilty of that. I had 7 guys, and even at that level, we were still eating pads like crazy. And that was something that, had I taken on that kind of philosophy and changed the way perhaps I use my pads, and perhaps in the way you clean your pads, I was doing things to try and increase the lifespan of them, but I hadn't done everything. And it's crazy to think of that. You're right. That $1,000, a month in pads, that's very easy to do for a lot of shops, or even $500 a month. And if you think about the pad cost savings, it goes right back to my cost per use argument that I've given everybody when it comes to microfiber. It's a tool that you're purchasing. And yes, you're spending the money on it, but if you're taking care of that tool the best way you can, your cost per use comes down for every time you use it. And like you said, that pad has done 20 cars. And if you think about the cost of each one of those cars and the cost of that pad, that price is extremely cheap.
And this is the thing why I said my costs were getting a bit out of control with some things. And I said, look, what can I do? What can I really do to actually cut my costs down? I thought I'm going to try, and as much as I didn't want to go away, I haven't gone away from Lake Country, even though I haven't bought for a long time because I just don't need to anymore, because I'm not actually detailing cars anymore, or automotive product wholesaling these days for a company. But I'm not done with the industry yet. I want to train. I want to actually, share knowledge and then work with some chemical companies and maybe tool companies as well. But these pads, if I bought a 6.5 inch pad, and it was I had to buy 300 minimum to buy from these guys because they're direct from foam manufacturers. One edge profile, so it was like semi-cone. Do you want semi-cone? Do you want cone? Do you want tapered? Do you want rounded edge? They've got 9 different edge profiles that you can literally buy from, choose from. And I think these were about 1.5 to 3 euros a piece.
Yeah.
Now that's insane. I've got no trouble paying $10, $15, $20 for a pad if I can't source them directly. And people have got to make their money. The company that converts the blocks into the pads, they've got to have their distributors and the retailers. I'm all for that, but I just had to get them in bulk to the point where I actually could say, these pads cost me this much, and I can cut my costs down. The only other way I could actually increase my efficiency or my speed was to say, okay, I want to be able to polish half a bonnet in one go and get 80% correction. And I could do that with that flex and a Dynabrade. No problem. You could do half a panel and get the kind of correction guys get out of a 2x2 section, almost. But you wouldn't quite get the same gloss, but you'd get that correction level.
Yeah.
So I had to do that. And, it's just, but there's a lot of stuff to foam. I mean, I'm not saying all the things I'm saying here are necessarily, everyone's going to agree with. That's just a lot of stuff that people have told me from various places, foam companies who make foam and distribute it and know everything it is to know about foam. So I'm just going by what they've said, and I've used it and I've listened to them and I've taken their advice, and it's worked. What else we got here? Obviously, we've talked about machines. Obviously, as far as like pads for a rotary, I like rounded edge profile, which is like a tapered design. Yep. DA long throw, I like semi-cone, cone, which is Rupes. They have the cone design. That's good. Force rotation, I like rounded edge, thin and tapered like the Lake Country Force pads, which are really good. And thin or thick, I don't mind either way. But yeah, there's a lot to it, and how many detailers actually look at it in this depth? I'm not saying, I'm not any better than anybody else, but this is just the kind of stuff I look at.
What you're doing though is causing those that are listening, I guarantee a lot of them are going to take that time to start to investigate, and it's something that all it takes is that spark. It's a lot. I guarantee there's a lot of detailers. We get this. I don't look at it as we sell a lot of pads, a lot of different types of pads, but we do. We sell Lake Country force pads for force rotation and rotary. We sell Lake Country purple foamed wool. We sell Lake Country low laid foams. We sell HDOs. We sell flat pads. We sell CCS. We sell microfiber. We sell the Euro foams from Buff and Shine and their microfiber, and we sell the yellow Rupes pad, and then the hybrid wools, blue and yellow. And I look at it and go, well, we don't sell that many pads. We sell the pads that me and Anthony like using, and that we have good luck with. And it's our style of the pads that we like to carry.
Everyone's different. Everyone's different. And it's like with liquids, with polishes and other different detailing products. Every product has got a characteristic, and you've got to match up what you like as a characteristic to the product that gives you that. That's my personal thought anyway. Like I like a polish. I like a polish that actually films on the surface, stays moist, and and actually worked. It doesn't dry up and dust and flash off and all that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sorry, I gotta plug in my phone.
That's all right.
Dane, what are your thoughts on all this?
All this stuff when it comes down to it, because I don't have a lot of real world firsthand experience with a lot of these things, these concepts, they obviously make sense, but at the same time, I can't really speak to it with any authority. So when it comes to social media and it comes to other things or other aspects of detailing where it's like, okay, I could take a grasp of it and sort of a layman's way explain it to a customer what's going on, how this stuff happens. When we start getting up more into the really finite, granular stuff, way down the rabbit hole, I love that kind of stuff. But when it comes to polishing, paint correction, compounding, pad technology, stuff like that, it does go a little beyond what I am remotely familiar with. However, that doesn't mean I'm not wanting to learn. It's just, as far as a practical application of it, I don't necessarily see myself doing it. So knowing myself, I probably won't retain that knowledge. They all know that I tend to just like in one ear, out the other, unless it's something that's like a very particular detail.
But at least you're like, I appreciate you, Dane, because you're really good at what you do. And what
I appreciate that.
Well, and I tell people, even though Dane isn't a detailer, he's got all the knowledge that a detailer has, because one, he's had to watch my videos because he was the one behind the camera for a long time.
Yeah,
I've
been forced into it.
So he's had to, through osmosis, has had to learn. He's also had to hear Anthony and I give our talks. He's also been able to go to all the training events that Anthony and I have been able to benefit from because he's been there with the camera. So whether he likes it or not,
no, and I
even
don't.
though he practically doesn't do it, he has so much knowledge and then all the customer service stuff that he fields for the rag company, he has through osmosis achieved a level of knowledge in the detail industry that most people would be very jealous to have. So
exactly.
I
do,
and
that's good. That's a good thing. And these two guys, unfortunately, in Australia, Australia is nowhere near where America is as far as having all these events to go to. Like, I love the fact that I can watch an Obsessed Garage video of him going to SEMA or someone else going to SEMA and seeing stuff, because I just can't get there right now. I can't. I haven't got 10 grand to just say, I'm just going to go to SEMA. I'm going to go here and go there. My dream is that one day we've got plane travel that's so quick that it basically allows me to go, I'm going to go to Boise, Idaho for the weekend and then come back home.
Yeah.
Give it 4 hours to get there. And people might say I'm crazy, but I'm thinking that far ahead and going, one day there's going to be wireless power technology. Maybe, hopefully it's not going to have any issues for our health or anything, but wireless power transfer and, no more big power lines, it'll all be gone. And I can see all that happening. I'm not a visionary necessarily, but I just want that sort of stuff because it's exciting. The status quo of like all these power tool manufacturers I talked to years ago saying, oh, you're a detailer, here's a rotary. It's just like bang my head against the wall. Can't you see how big this industry and even other industries around it that use power tools could use with dual orbit polishes and variable orbit and rotaries that all this other stuff. They just don't. They just want to make the machine they've always made, and it just drives me nuts.
Oh yeah.
But I do want to get onto wall pads real quick. There's a lot of things I want to cover fast because time is ticking, and again, hopefully this is good stuff. But
absolutely.
How people have always said that rotaries always put a hologram in, or they always put swirl marks in, or wall pads always put marks in. Often, now look, Jason Rose is someone I respect massively, and we have talked a few times, and he's disagreed with me on things, but he's probably been more right than I've been wrong. And you often, yes, with a wool pad you can get marks on a rotary, especially. I even had one of the guys from Maguire's I really admire, who's a great bloke, say, I think it was on Jimbo's podcast, you can't use wool on a DA. I was already using it. I was already using Asian style wool pads on a DA freaking at the time. This was like 2012, 2011. I was already doing it. So, because I just wanted to be able to do that. But I think when it comes to wool, there's so many different types. I mean, we've got superfine grade wool from Australia, from New Zealand. That's sort of like they do what's called a micron testing to actually test the wool, and which the lower the micron, the better it is, and the higher quality it goes for. Now we've got fine grade, your typical Irish merino, your Turkish wool, which is really nice, and they've got a lot of different processes they can do, and they can steam it and it's unsteamed, like the Lake Country pads, which are great. But a lot of the time, I've found that if you get a rotary and you have a backing plate that's fractionally, like it's not spinning perfectly centered because it's worn out, or it's a dodgy one and it's warped, you'll have an issue with, it putting a swell mark in, or it might be putting some marks in here or there. And if you put a pad fractionally off center on a rotary, I've heard of people putting them off center deliberately to make it sort of work like an orbital. But every time I've tried that, even if it's a millimeter off or 8 millimeters to the left, it just puts marks in. It just doesn't work. It creates vibration and it just doesn't work. But I think the barbs that were in the walls of the past and the compounds of the time that my mentor said, they tear at the paint to correct it, and rather than sort of having abrasives that roll over it, they tear at it to correct it, and then they just can't finish right. Maybe that's not true, I don't know, but I've tried all sorts of weird combinations. Like my favorite thing to do, even though I know you're not going to get enough correction out of it most of the time, but just as a test for yourselves to show you how good it makes it work, get a jeweling polish, a finishing polish that's really runny, that's water-based, and use it with a wool pad that's like a flat style, like a low lint wool with a foam interface in it, like from Lake Country or something like that, and use it with a jeweling polish and get another one exactly the same and use a really strong compound with it and see which one actually, how they feel after you use them and then after you wash them, and the result you get. I've actually corrected plastic bumpers. My own car that had horrible orange peel when it was repaired, I used jeweling polish, on a wool pad that was like a Dynabraid 3-inch wool pad that was a high quality pad. And I got some of the orange peel down, I got the sanding marks they left in there out, and the gloss I got out of that was like I foamed it almost. And then I just went to foam and it looked insane. And the pad after I cleaned it felt like the most plushest, softest thing I'd ever felt. And the compounded one felt like crap. Because I've always believed that having moist pads, keeping the fiber-based pad moist, whether it's with water or whether it's with a fraction of paraffin oil, because you can buy that in a bottle and put the tiniest little amount in there, or using a compound that's a really good high-quality formulation, whether it's thick or thin, it just works so much nicer than this sort of thick, gluggy compound that just makes all the wool strands sort of stick together, and all the paint residue clog in with it. And no matter how much you blow it out, unless you blow it out heaps, it just doesn't finish right. It just finishes like crap. And people don't slow their machine speed down with diminishing abrasives. They don't refine. They don't blow the pads out enough. I mean, I don't know why I've become so insanely obsessed with pad cleanliness, but I'm probably one of the most anal people with it. But I could literally do any car and with anything except for a pad that's way too aggressive for it. And I'll never have to go back and fix anything. Or if I do put a hologram in with a rotary, it's so fine. It's out in 2 seconds or 5 seconds or 10 seconds. Whereas other people that go 2.5 flat out and then just stop and don't blow their pad out at least once, it looks horrid.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty crazy though.
Go on, mate, but it's just, go get passionate.
No, dude, you're good. That, like I said, it's that minutia that you get into when you start thinking about it. And I was saying this yesterday when we were talking was, you know, I think there's a lot of detailers that feel this way. You know, you get in one of the beauties of this industry, and the reason I think a lot of people stay in it, one is it's satisfying. Two, it's meditative. When you get into just polishing and you can get lost in your brain and you can watch that pad move and watch that paint correct, as you can almost see through the pad is one of the things I say. You almost see through that machine into the paint and you can watch it. That's when these thoughts start popping in. And a lot of detailers listen to this and they'll go, oh, I wonder if, or I noticed this is happening, but nobody says it outward because it's not a normal process. And it's fun when you hear somebody else say something and you go, that's right, I was thinking about that. I'm glad somebody said it. I'm glad I'm not the only one.
You're building those connections.
I'm guilty of that as I listen to other detailers talk, is go, oh my gosh, that has been in my brain for the last, you know, for me, it was years because I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. So it was nice to hear that from somebody else and go, okay, I'm not that I'm on the right path. My thought process is sound. And that is it's very nice to have that. So, you know,
and
some people may go, man, you're going down the rabbit hole, but people have these thoughts and they have these wondering, and when you can delve that deep into pads and the compounds and the paint.
You know, backing plates. Backing plates with, you know, I would go from a hard backing plate with my first step to a intermediate one that's a bit softer than like a 25 millimeter thick one on a rotary to make it less aggressive, and then increase my arm speed and slow my machine speed right down. Like with my fine polisher, I've got my ultra low speed rotary. It's 200 RPM. I go to 350 to finish, and it's can you really work at that speed and correct and break down abrasives that are diminishing abrasive or non-diminishing? What I use is a water-based single polish system. There's 3 different ones: one for hard, one for medium, one for soft. But I can mix them all together because they're made from the same base and everything, and the abrasives are different and all that. But yeah, it is quite mind-blowing how far this stuff goes. But most people don't think about it. But it's just crazy. But I mean, people have been giving wool pads and rotaries a bad name for a long time. Yes, you can make a lot of mess with a rotary and a wool pad on a car, and you can do damage. But it's not that simple. It's not like, oh, I just touch it and that's it. It's stuffed. Not at all. Not really at all. It's and there's a lot of things you can do with cleaning them as well. Like, again, I mean, I would never use an APC or a degreaser on them because it just dries them out. It dries the foam out. It's just not. I mean, you can use it if it's diluted right. You might get away with it. But a citrus-based one, it's a liquid, not a powder, because powders, like Ivan's been saying, who I really admire. And I talked to him, I don't know, maybe a month or 2 ago. I spoke to him on the phone, and he's right about a lot of things he says. Like, powders don't ever really fully dissolve. They come back eventually. They're still there somewhat. So I've always been about using liquids to clean them, not powders. But I don't know. There's difference of opinion, but I got to say though, I really wish more detailers would actually use sanding, because it makes polishing look so. I know you could polish a car 3 times, and you can then hit it with get some 3M Trizact, 3000 or some micro mesh 12,000 grit. Something like that. I've got some of them here, and 8,000. I actually tested a few. I think there was about 5 8,000 grit 3M Trizact discs in Australia back in June last year when it was released in America, and that 3M gave me about 3 and said, "Look, try them," and I freaking loved them. They're insane. I wish they would, because I worked on my Ford for like 4 years. I'd polish it once a year for 4 years, and I went, "Looks great." And I got 4,000 grit Mercurabalon, and I did it on the bonnet, and it looked like I'd sanded it. I'd polished it 18 times. It looks so good. It just made it look night and day different. It just makes polishing seem prehistoric in comparison, like how much effect it can have. And it can be dangerous if you're not careful and you've got paint thickness gauges and all that. But I love it. I absolutely love damp sanding with 3-inch discs and 6-inch discs, and I just love the results you get. It just transforms paint, as long as there's enough there, of course.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people don't understand is that you would remove, if you're doing it right, you can remove less material sanding with a high grit and get a better cut than you would if you were to cut the traditional method. You would actually be removing less clear coat.
Yeah. Like, for example, a rotary and a wool pad with a compound some years ago, you'd probably take off about 3.8 to 4.5 microns, maybe 4.2 microns each time you did a section and worked it. Microfiber and a DA, I've seen it take 5.5 in doing 2 passes, blowing the pad out, adding either leaving the polish on the surface, adding either a bit more of the same one or another one, because these are universal to some degree. They're not just a compound polish, a finishing polish. It's single polish where you can do different things. It's non-diminishing. It's non-diminishing with diminishing abrasives as well. And I would then obviously do another pass or 2, and I'm done. And it's just night and day difference. So, and I love sanding. Sanding to fix oxidation. I used to try and fix oxidation years ago. I thought, I can get that out. And you'd wool pad it, and it would look great. And then you got the foam pad on it, and you went, it's all gone all dull again. Okay, it's still there, So I said, okay, I'm going to try sanding. So I'd 5,000 grit my customers' cars, 8,000. Not working. 5, not bad. Maybe 3 or 4, and then that was it. It was all gone. Polish it with a blue Gekotex pad, and basically it's done in one step. It's gone, finished good enough or very well, and you're done. And if it comes back again, I just hit it with like 2 or 3,000 very gently, very quickly, and it would never come back again. And I just love the result you'd end up with. And I'd take off stuff all, because I'm very cautious. I might be these days one of the slowest guys to polish a panel if I really want to be anal on a car, on my own car. But I mean, I didn't realize the kind of results I was getting and what I was delivering back from 07 to about 2015, doing these 3 stages, 1,500, $2,000, $2,500, thinking, everyone does that. And then I started working for a company in 2018, and it was like, oh my God, these guys are horrifying. They haven't got a clue. Like, what are they delivering? This is terrible.
Yeah.
Just no idea. It was like, how they would shampoo a seat would be they get a bucket with warm water in it, get some carpet shampoo, get a sponge, literally dunk the sponge in it, run it all over the seat, and then suck it up. That's not how you really the best way you can shampoo a seat.
No,
yeah,
that'll.
There are guys that do that though. That's how they've done it for years, and they don't think about the materials that they're working on. They're just they go in almost on autopilot, and it's just like, this is how we clean it, this is how we scrub it.
Yeah.
So we do. I remember years doing dealership work where, you'd have a detailed shop prior to us, we'd be called to fix it, but the detail shop would use a very caustic chemical like an APC to bucket wash the carpet, and then they just dry it off and leave it, and the carpet would dry, and there'd be a powder because the caustic soap would leave a powder residue in the carpet, or a powder stain in the carpet, and we'd have to come in and clean that to remove that just because of that damage. And we joked about it on the podcast yesterday, was using a very strong APC to clean instrument panels and control stocks and things like that. And what a lot of people don't understand is you can erase literally all the white markings on those control stocks.
You can.
With a very strong APC.
If I went, okay, my favorite thing sometimes to do, and it's probably, I'm not sure if it's controversial or not, but with leather, you can steam it very quickly, or you can, my favorite thing to be more efficient was get one of those, most people, I'm not sure how many people in the industry really have ever used a Shawbuff hand pad, which is a 4x6 inch hand pad. And there's 3 different versions of them, and I get the gentlest one. and I will spray it with my teacher's leather cleaner at the right ratio so it doesn't over wet and all that sort of stuff. And I just gently scrub it. I could do probably the top and bottom of a seat in a minute, and the guys are there brushing away, and it's just like, I'm done. Now, if you get a Sure Buff pad and you put some pretty strong stuff on it, and you go and work going over those indicator stalks and all that stuff, yeah, you can take stuff off real quick. And if you want to, you can get a steering wheel that's whatever kind of typical, your vinyl, leatherette, whatever kind of materials they are, and you can hit it with a really strong cleaner with a Sure Buff pad, and when you scrub it hard, you will make it sort of start be molting itself. It'll start falling apart, and you've taken all the color out of it. And they're deadly if you're not careful, but man, do they clean.
Yeah, well, and that's always my favorite, was seeing the guys that were buying chemicals from the dollar store and using those and going, hey, I'm trying to save money. And they're using these random, solvents and PPCs that are just like, man, those things are deadly, and you're using it straight, and you're damaging the car more than you are properly cleaning it.
Well,
and so
the thing, and that was like what I said in my comment yesterday or the day before with that, with your other show, which was fantastic, by the way, was, like vehicle surface care. Technically, if you want to put it what it really is to me, it's vehicle surface cleaning and polishing, enhancement, protection, and care. Not make every surface shiny and clean it with the strongest stuff you can because it's faster.
Yeah.
Yep.
And with guys, we seem to have a lot of people, at least in Australia, who want faster and faster cut with their compounds. But I was always about the finish. Okay, it's good to be efficient, get the job done, but focus on the finish. And I might not have been the fastest guy to correct a car. I might have been quick, I might have been slow, I don't know. But my finishes were world class, and they lasted too. And that's what I survived purely on reputation. I didn't have to advertise. I never discounted, because my dad always said to me, if you discount or you lower your prices too much and you say your quality, people will think it's just not right. It can't be done. Like if you give something away as part of a service, say, look, I'm giving you this for free. To them, it's like the average person. It's like that mustn't be worth much then. Hey.
Yeah, true.
But I've never focused on, okay, I've got to cut faster. You are, as a detailer, you are delivering the best finish you can for every service that you do in price bracket. Focus on the finish and do it within a reasonable time. I've always said to other people, don't rush, but don't dawdle either.
Yeah. Well, and that was something, I tried to do in my shop, was to provide the most amount of correction for the price point that they were paying for. Whether it was a 1-step, a 2-step, a 3-step, it was, look, this car, I'm doing just a 1-step on it. That's all they're paying for. But we are going to give you the most gloss and the best enhancement that we possibly can with this 1-step process.
Yep.
And, there's still, honestly, there's a lot of detailers that just don't understand that. Every car has to be a 3-step. Every car has to, and I'm guilty of that as well. I was saying this weekend, I worked on a Suburban that was destroyed, a big black Suburban. But my buddy doesn't pay attention to that stuff. And for him, it was shiny enough. It was clean. It looked good. It looked the way he wanted it to look, and I used it all in one on it because I spent a long time on that interior, and I was already behind the 8-ball on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Money-wise, and
exactly.
I got it done to the level that he wanted, and when he saw it, he was so excited to see it. To him, it was better than it came to me, which is exactly what he wanted. And I could have chased every single scratch, and I could have, really got him a show car finish, but
why?
He's got 4 or 5 kids, and they play with boxes all over the car, and they've got bikes, and it's getting banged up. It's not a show car. Why does it need it? It's a family vehicle that does camping, does all this, does yard work, does all the hauling that it needs to do. And he just wants it to look nice and shiny and clean and look like it's well taken care of. And that's what I was able to deliver. So
and that's great. Like I said, that's what. I mean, maybe it's 60, 70, 80% of the market is in certain places or everywhere. It's I never really liked the term full detail because it was like I'm doing something on every section, but I'm not doing much. I'd rather do a lot on most of them, or a lot on the paint, or a lot on the interior, or a lot on both. Not I'll just touch everything and that's it. Like it's just I never offered full details as such. I never wanted to do dealer work. I never wanted to do big numbers.
Yeah.
And that was one of my flaws. I guess it was back then. It was like I wanted to do high end because I enjoyed it. I ended up doing a lot of the cars with the 07 to 09 of basically like I'll sit there and do a 3-stage. They're paying handsomely, and we're talking 4 digits easy. And I would sit there and spend another 10, 20 hours on it because I wanted it to look as good as I'd see marks and go, no, I've got to fix that, it's not good enough. And then people walk in and go, did you paint this thing with glass or what?
Yeah.
But the problem is
that's what you want, though.
There's problems with obviously with OEM paints. Not problems with it, but the thing with paint is if you get an OEM paint, some of them are really nice, some of them are really thin, some of them are very orange peely, and I've got this sort of like a dry spray look to them. And if you try to take some or all of the orange peel out, you end up with a really glossy finish if you haven't gone through it. But there's hardly anything left. And then on the other side of the coin, if you say, okay, I'm going to have a show car finish, unless it's a car that you drive very, very rarely, if you sand it flat and it's got a ton of paint on it, and it's Glazerite paint or something, or Sikkens or RMs or whatever, and it's dead flat, if you get a mark on that thing, you'll see it from the moon. That's the other side. And that's the problem. I mean, you either run out of paint, or the paint's crap, or there's not much on there, or you make it absolutely flawless. And as soon as you get a mark on it, you can see it from 10 million miles away. You just see it from, and that's the problem. Like, most of the detailers need to focus on whatever market they want to do. But their market also doesn't have to be within their city and their county and their state. I used to get work from Western Australia, New South Wales, Victoria because of my reputation and the work I delivered. It can be done. I mean, you can be an international detailer. Not everyone can be, but you can be that. You can be, a leading expert that all the people that absolutely love their cars and are willing to spend the money on them will go to you because time and time again, the work that you put out of there is just phenomenal. Yeah. It's just hard to get the money from people, though.
I think that's a good spot to wrap it up. And I mean, this has been amazing. And I think we could keep going if we needed to.
There's a lot in there.
Yeah, this has been awesome, brother. We appreciate it, man.
There's another 5 pages still haven't even covered yet.
Yeah. But definitely we'll have to get you in for a part 2.
Yeah.
If people want to reach out, chat with you, how do they do it?
Basically, these days, got Google Duo, but Facebook is the main one. I do have Instagram, but it's not really a high priority of my moment. But just look up my name, and you'll see the blue. If you see the blue Ford Falcon in the little cover picture or the profile picture, that's me. Send me a message. You can do video calls, whatever else. Happy to help anybody in the industry. I got to say, I really appreciate the opportunity because, like I said, to me, I've always thought I'm just a guy that just loves what he does it, and tries my best. And to actually, I'm hoping that I really hope that in some degree I've left a mark on this industry. I can leave a decent legacy because I've always had this mindset of, I don't want to be someone who just sort of made his money and then that was it and his life's over. I'm thinking about what I'm going to think of when I'm 85 or 80 if I make it that far, and will I be happy with what I've done? So to be known by the people like you guys, and even Rennie knows me and other people in the industry that are heavy hitters. It's a hell of a compliment, I think. I just love love the industry, and it's just want to do some more stuff for it. So
awesome,
that's excellent. Well, we appreciate it.
Awesome.
So thanks for coming on. So again, anybody, Matthew Gibb, look him up.
Yeah. No, if you
So
want to
he's a
nerd
good
out
guy.
over anything remotely detailing related, Matthew-
Stupidly technical stuff.
And Matt, if only we could find a way to take a Fancy Freeze Boston Shake
ooh.
and get it sent your way, we would.
Oh, I
Uh-huh.
love these when I was over there and all the stuff you guys have got there. Burger time on a Saturday night, man. That was the bomb.
Oh,
Well, there we go.
that's awesome. So, Matthew, thank you so much for coming on. I know, forgive us if we yawned or anything throughout the whole process. It was a little earlier in the morning for us. It's late at
Or
night
if-
for you,
yeah.
so it's kind
Or
of
if it
we're
was
making
me,
it work. You're in Australia after all, so
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
I needed my coffee. Any rate, so awesome to have you on here, and obviously this was a wealth of information. I know a lot of people are really going to enjoy just pouring through all the details, and I'm sure to bring some more questions your way, and you'll have plenty for a part 2 when it happens. So thank you
Thanks,
so much
guys.
to everybody who listened. Thank you so much to everybody who watches. And do go check out Matthew and ask him some questions. I know you'll have some great responses. So anyway, guys, till next time, this is us saying adios.
See ya.
Yeah.